Unlike video where there's only a couple of signal types, it seems like with audio there's tons and tons of options, and I never have the right one. If I show up at a location and I'm patching into the soundboard, like, oh, well, we're using PhotoPlug, and then you'll go back and like, oh, it's a 1/4 inch. It's like, oh wait, isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, exactly, Rich. I mean, it's just really kind of funny. You know, when you go out into the field, you think that you have all the audio adapters you need, and I'm just here to tell you that there's never enough audio adapters that you can carry when you go out on set or on the field. Audio is one of those things that often has to get changed around from different types of cables, different types of connectors and that kind of thing. And so it's something that when you go out in the field, you want to make sure that you're properly prepared. And here today, we have some of the most common and sort of the essential ones to adapt different types of audio cables and signals to each other. So why don't you start out and show us a few of these?
Well, let's go with sort of a basic idea here of getting audio into the camera.
Yep.
In this case, I'm going to start with an XLR. So let's say I'm going with an XLR cable, and I'm going to patch this in. Now, this XLR could go to the microphone or to the soundboard, and that's great. And then I'm going to run that over to the mixer.
Okay.
Well, the mixer is going to allow us to cut that in. So let's just unhook this here.
Okay.
And there we go. Always lots of cables, always get tangled, invariably.
Yep.
All right, so this end is designed to go into my mixer.
Now this is a portable field mixer that we have with us. Eventually we're going to get this signal going to the camera, but a little portable field mixer is nice when you need to combine multiple audio signals and feed to your camera.
Yeah, especially since it'll let you adjust the volume and, of course, incredibly importantly, plug in headphones.
So you can monitor, sure.
Yeah, so we've got that in there. So, of course, now this is going output.
Yep.
Well, okay, but I want input. So, again, first mistake, unplug, go the other way. And this is what happens all the time. People get confused. Walk people through this idea of in versus out.
Well, I mean, it sounds simple, right? But 99% of problems that exist with audio is that the signal path is not correct. I found that when you're out in the field, you know, I'm not getting audio, I can't hear anything. The first thing to check is how the signal path is. And in this case, when Rich plugged in, the XLR cable to the wrong side of the mixer, guess what the result's going to be?
It's going to go the wrong direction and we'll hear nothing.
We'll hear nothing, exactly. So when you're out there in the field, that's the first thing to check. Before you start breaking out adapters and all that kind of stuff, just make sure your inputs and outputs are connected correctly.
Okay, so we've got the microphone cable that would go to the house sound or microphone going into my mixer, and now I need to go out of the mixer and I want to go a couple of places. Well, I can go from the mixer right to the camera and maybe I'm recording that way. Well, if I look at my camera, I see that this one does have a mic jack, but it's a mini plug, much like a headphone jack.
It is.
So what would I do?
Well, you're going to need to adapt it in some way because you're not going to get this plug into that small little hole. I mean,
I could push really hard.
I've tried. So yeah, there's a couple different ways that we could adapt this. Now, you see here we have a whole bunch of different ways. Now, you just have to make a decision what you kind of want to do. Now, in my case, Rich, I know that we have an 1/8 inch jack and we have an XLR. Maybe one of the options that we try is an XLR to 1/8 inch adapter, but guess what?
This one will actually work.
Okay.
So we've got our output here in this case. So I could plug that in and take the output of the mixer.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep. And then on this end,
we could take that right in.
Yep. And the reason I was saying guess what, Rich, is because sometimes you got to be careful about what your output is going to be. Now, I just sort of mistakenly looked at this and thought it was 1/4 inch out, but on closer inspection, obviously, it's XLR out.
Well, we do actually have both, because you nailed it, because in this case, we could go out of the headphone jack, which is going to be 1/4 inch.
Yep.
And I have an adapter here, right? So as you see, we've got a 1/4 inch adapter going to just a small headphone jack. So I could have gone out of either end. Maybe I didn't have the XLR output. So plugging that into there, we can now go from 1/4 inch to headphone, and we have a headphone cable, right?
Yeah, exactly, Rich. So we could take just sort of an 1/8 inch phono jack right into the headphones, other end right into the camera, and we're good to go.
Yeah, but in this case, I'm going to use the XLR adapter, just a higher quality signal. But that was just one example of a real world workflow problem, and it's going to vary, right? Because here I've got my Zoom H4n, and it's got XLR adapters. And here's a different external audio recorder, and it's
got 1/4 inch.
Yeah, so it really comes down to having the right tool. So you could do this really two ways. You can go with cables. For example, I've got a 1/4 inch to headphone jack, and this is specifically designed in this case so I can go out of here into the camera, and I know that because it's my audio recorder, my camera I use the most, I went for the dedicated cable, less adapters. On the other hand, you got a giant box of adapters there.
This is my friend, the box of old adapters here, not old being OLD, but OLE, right? And this
Yeah.
is an essential thing that you should have in your kit. Just a box, a tackle box, something like that that you can carry with you. And one of the things that I like to carry with me are these guys that you see right here. And these are all sort of gender changers, if you will, or sort of adapters. And they do different things, these barrel adapters. So you can see this one, I go from an XLR female to 1/4 inch. This one actually lets me go from a 1/4 inch female to XLR on this side. This one's actually really neat, Rich. This one, if you can see there, it allows
Yeah.
you to go from USB to XLR.
So if I needed to run the audio into my computer, maybe I was using the computer as a sync sound device,
Right.
I could adapt that and then record right to a desktop application like Adobe Audition.
Absolutely. And the best thing about all of these adapters is that they're not going to break the bank. You can go to a plethora of online retailers and find these adapters for sometimes just $1 or $2. Same thing with the cables. They're not very expensive. So when you're gearing up to go on a shoot, it's always a good idea to go out there and get a sort of a good collection,
Yeah.
size and sort of different types of adapters, because you never know what you're going to find on set and on location.
Yeah, one of the things that I strongly recommend is that you give some thought to the logical microphone path. So think about, where's my audio coming from? Do I need to patch into any existing audio sources? Maybe you're an event videographer and you need to patch into the audio at a church or a concert venue, but you want to ideally think about that. And there's really two strategies. Either have one of everything, or novel idea, go to the venue ahead of time and check your audio. Audio is one of those things you just cannot make up for. If you don't get good audio, you're pretty much screwed.
You are, and you made a really good, interesting point there about going to the venue, especially if you're doing like music or having to tap into a mixing board. We talked about this in a previous episode, but another thing besides the actual adaptation is the actual signal, whether you're working with line level or mic level, and the adapters that you choose might play into what the signal is actually being fed to you and where it's being fed from.
All right, so that's the idea with audio. We've covered audio in some past episodes, so be sure to check out some of the other workflows we've discussed. Let's go on and take a look at essential video adapters.